sailing is what we do. And Amelia is a really strong swimmer. She grew up swimming and grew up on the East Coast in the Chesapeake Bay. She's also a sailor.
Oh, okay.
But that's always been one of her rules. And, it's so funny. This is what, she was a teacher for a long time too. She's definitely better at the, having that natural ability to know what's right as a parent, as an educator. And because we're basically, for lack of better terms, we homeschool our kids and have been since David was in second grade. Oh. Even though it's hard to call, you say homeschool, you conjure up all these ideas, right? That there's so many resources for that here and so many different things that kids can do, whether it's, outsourcing certain classes, parents that get together and teach. In fact, there's a group called Conejo Valley Homeschoolers that she found when she was here.
I've heard of that.
Way different. I mean, this is what happened to us in the Bay Area. First off, the whole reason we were homeschooling is probably not what people think, right? It was really that, Amelia had gone to really great private schools and got a great education on the East Coast. And when we were in the Silicon Valley, whether I could afford or wanted to, it was just so many crazy tuition fees for these private schools that were, quite frankly, all they had to be was better than the really lousy public schools. So I was like, well, we're not doing that. We had to come up with an alternative. And she and I kind of came up, and she really said, I think I can handle this, and was putting together curriculum. That's one of her specialties, but it's curriculum development.
Oh, wow.
So she was putting together this curriculum. Next thing you know, we're off and running. And Charlotte has never been in the institution of formal or public education or any kind, right? She's been homeschooled all along, but she right now currently goes to some classes. David, as you know, has even taken some classes at Moore Park, even though he's 15, at Moore Park College, which is great. Hopefully he can earn some college credits while he's also working on getting his high school diploma. Yeah. So they're pretty well rounded, but back to the swimming thing, that's again, my parents did their best with me, right? And it was like, well, he's not really much of an athlete, right? And I really wasn't much of a musician either, but I always tried a little bit of something. Right. But my mom was paranoid. I don't think she should ever learn how to swim. And I think that kept me, one is I always wanted to go into the water, but I never really realized the value in being a super strong swimmer until I got my ass kind of pounded by a couple of waves in Santa Cruz in that cold water. Mm-hmm. I was realizing, man, this sport's kind of dangerous. Well, it's actually really not. If you know what you're doing and as you're a strong swimmer. And I think that's with our kids, they started swimming at a really young age. They went to swimming lessons. They were on a swim team. They both play water polo now. So I don't have that same, they have to be, I think naturally our first thing, and I think that's why Amelia set it up that way, right, is make sure they're damn strong swimmers, and they have been since a really young age. When they were first at the YMCA pool, getting a little wristband to show that they could swim after they're swimming. Can they swim one full lap without stopping? And then they get their little band, and they're proud that and then that moved into swim team, and then of course water polo, which is basically I didn't know anything about it until we moved here, and it's like watching. It's almost like soccer, but it's
they're treading water the entire time.
Yeah, and the other team's basically trying to drown you as these kids are competing and. It's a tough sport, right? Yeah. So I know if they can do that and focus and play that game and while breathing, right, and being in the water, I don't have as much worry about throwing them a boogie board and a surfboard and say, go paddle out there and watch for riptides if they know how, all those things. And there's lifeguards. That's why we go to it's really, again, this community is so amazing and how close we are to Malibu. Right. All the spots when I was growing up to surf, first off, there was no lifeguards. There was almost not even a decent way to get down the cliffs. You had to carry your board, and half of my board dings were not from anything I did in the water. It was from dropping them, slipping on some damn rock, walking down a steep, muddy cliff to get down into the water. Yeah. So luckily, we don't have that here, right? We've got a lot nicer situation with, quite honestly, I think better beaches, better surf. So yeah, I think if you're a confident swimmer, you're pretty good, and you're not going out in anything huge. You're not trying to go. It's not like the North Shore of Oahu where you see those big, huge waves on videos. Right. You're starting on a big, long board with little, short waves. And like you say, if you got the balancing and the turning, it's a little different, I think, surfing than it is with snowboarding or skateboarding. But you still have that general, you're riding this board.
Idea of pumping transition, I think, probably translates somewhat.
I think that's the hardest. For me, the hardest part was just keeping my balance and keeping focused, timing those waves, right? Mm-hmm. And trying to get in sync with that. And then, of course, once you feel yourself moving, getting up in that one quick instant without screwing up and, stepping too far in the nose or the side and rolling over or something. It takes a little coordination, which I don't have a lot of, which is why I had a really hard time with it, but I really loved it when I was doing it. And, like I said, once I got on a little Hobie Cat and started surfing that, taking a sailboat out in the ocean, I was like, well, this is really cool.
Yeah.
And for me, that just came more natural, and I could watch the rhythm of the waves and all that stuff and kind of calculate my speed, sheet in or sheet out, rather than just paddling like crazy and breathing and then missing that damn wave. So that's why I think I made that transition. Kind of a lazy guy's sport, if you will, at that point. The wind and the getting that momentum and playing that was what was propelling me as opposed to paddling. Now, we still like kayaking. We do that as a family. That's kind of cool, too. But usually on kind of a more sheltered water. We're not out in the ocean doing it. We're kind of either in a harbor or in some reservoirs, lakes. Estuaries are really fun places because you get the best of, you still got to play the tide a little bit, but you get to see a lot of sea life that you do in calm water that's protected. It's kind of cool.
How much time do you think your kids spend school each day? Like, quote unquote, in school with a homeschooling type of paradigm? Because there's a lot of people around, a lot of families around here homeschool.
Yeah, that's right. They do. And I think
we originally, Zena and I originally thought that we would homeschool our kids, and then as it came up, just the circumstances at the time with work and the clinic not being quite right yet, and Zena's still in her old work, and we ended up just sending them to school. And then we see Sonia liking the social aspect of being in school so much.
Sure.
She's such a butterfly about it.
Yeah.
And so it's been okay. But I still always think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My question.
No, it's okay.
What's their day like?
I'd say the majority of it is spent, like any other kid. It's probably 5 to 6 hours. And then there's times that we've talked before where that, when that starts to slide or when they're not keeping up with a class or,
right.
And it's really weird because that social aspect, now the new social aspect is that Brady Bunch screen on Zoom, right? There's so many classes they used to take with other kids, whether in a physical place, that are now done electronically.
It's totally a Brady Bunch screen.
It's kind of weird, yeah. But in fact, the homeschool group that I mentioned, I think Julia, you're always talking about her Greta Van Fleet fandom.
That's right,
I think that's where our families met, or where David met, was in one I'm
I think she also took college class, or is taking college
and
classes.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I should pay more attention to this. Like I said, I'm gone a lot. I usually travel, and Amelia runs more of the academic stuff. But I do know enough about it to not be totally negligent. But I think there was a science class that David was taking where the kids were going over to Simi Valley, and I think Julia might have been in one of those classes, a little older. Gotcha. It was like for one of those kids aged 12 to 14, and maybe David was 12. I think she's a year older than him or something. But that's when I saw that. I said, wow, another one of those great resources that we didn't quite have in our old neighborhood, where you can have groups of people that are like-minded and think that it's still important to, Amelia is, like I said, a great teacher. She was a teacher for years at all different levels, but where she said, I'm not a science teacher and I'm not a math teacher, so maybe I'll get a math program to put him in, and a science program where he was actually going to a science lab off-site. It was really cool. And Charlotte's doing that now too, where there's actually, even the food thing, where I mentioned a hobby being gardening or cooking, those can actually be incorporated in the curriculum, can be created for that being a math and science type of learning, cool. Right? In fact, I think, again, Amelia's, she'll always tell you I'm a great negotiator, but that's only on the business end of things. She somehow wound up, while putting a curriculum together, that this Friday night jam is kind of an art or music program, right? So he has something that he has to study and learn and perform it on Friday night. He's not rehearsing with you guys. It's kind of like Friday night's him taking a test, right? During the week, he's doing his homework, he's attending class, which means he's plugging into his amp and he's looking up stuff, and then he learns his jam, and then he comes here. That's the test, and we can kind of grade him. You should totally grade him. You should.
He'll turn and look at me like, B+.
Yeah, B. That was a B+, man.
It's not your best effort.
That's right. There was not enough cowbell. You would have had an A, right? But which is really cool. But there's a lot of things, and I think it's really cool that we've been able to travel with the kids. Again, you rack up as a guy that does that for a living, you rack up all these hotel points and frequent flying miles.
Oh, yeah, you must rack that up.
Yeah, and if you fly a lot on Southwest, like I do, I mentioned before, I'm not getting first class upgrades because there aren't, right? So I burn my miles on the family and take them places. It's really cool.
That's cool.
And from day one, I always remember Amelia saying, it doesn't matter where we're going, whether it's Hawaii or we took them to China. They went to when they were really little, they went to Beijing and Shanghai, and she decided that's going to be part of their curriculum. We're going to learn about Chinese history. We're going to learn about their government. And it's a little different to learn it but to learn it when you know you're going to get on a plane and go see it, that's really cool.
That's really cool.
Because I remember being pretty bored as a kid and reading stuff that I was going to have a test or was going to be on the chalkboard, whatever it was. But if somebody says, yeah, but now I'm going to put your ass on a plane and take you there once you learn this, that's pretty cool.
That's very cool.
So it's funny. So because I know that was a long-winded lefty right turn, windy road to your answer, but they spend most of their weekdays really on school, like most kids would, probably 5 to 6 hours a day.
There you go. Yeah, that's good on you. You got to have. It sounds like you and your wife are a good team on that.
Absolutely.
You walked in and you said you liked the choice of book.
I do, right? Absolutely.
Yeah. You've read this?
You know what? I probably could have written it, to be honest with you, but no, I do want to read it, even though it probably sounds a little bit like, preaching to the choir.
Right.
And that's what's really funny. This is, again, the yin yang, or as Amelia and I are a good team.
Yeah.
Right? She's constantly like, what do you think? And what do they think? And I'm almost like, I don't give it. She goes, wow, how do you do that? And I was like, I don't know. It could be perceived as self-indulgent or narcissistic, right? But in a way, it makes me happy to where I feel, and again, I'm biased about me, right? I think I'm a pretty easy guy to get along with. And when somebody's not getting along with me, I just go like, I don't care.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to move away from that. This person thinks I'm a dipshit. I'll just leave. And I'm not crying about it. I'm not thinking about it, And it's funny. She has some of that too, and she definitely has a lot more of that. Really, that confident East Coast. What's the word I'm looking for? Like she's really intelligent, right? But she also is self-analyzing a lot. Right. Did we do the right thing? Should we do this? Did we do that? Is that the right program? And at the end of the day, thank God that she does do that, because otherwise I'd be like, you know what? He can go out and scoop the pool, and that's a class. No, right. That's not a class. Right? That's a chore. There's a difference. They're both important, but right. It's good that she's figured out. And again, I thought it was brilliant. Just that the Friday Jam thing is one of those things that she put. She was really. We've always felt that too. That's one of the heartbreaking things, or why we didn't want them in public schools back when we were in the Bay Area. When they started getting rid of not just art and music, when they got rid of even a phys ed program. But the local Y, she's always been involved though, and she's on the board of the YMCA here in Ventura County. But when we first started doing some programs with the YMCA up in the Silicon Valley, that was one of the things I love about the YMCA as an organization. They came in and they were like, you can't not have PE and get kids outside. You just can't. Not everybody it's not good for them all to have just screen time, book time. So the local YMCA in the South Bay had decided they just had this group of volunteers that came out and pulled the kids out of the classroom and just throw a rubber ball at them and let them kick it around and do something with it and organize. They could make up some stupid game at the idea that didn't even make sense, and they didn't have to. It was just you're getting kids outside to let them run around, play, get some fresh air and sweat a little bit, and then get them back inside after they have their lunch. And it was great, but it was a Band-Aid. It was heartbreaking to me that, every time you turn a corner, there was some other tech company making tons of money, right? So all this tax money, you would hope they were paying into the community, but they just kept shutting down program after program. So no art, no music, that becomes heartbreaking in itself. And then when there was no PE and the Y has to come in and save the day, I was like, wow, this is crazy. And I think it was at that point where we were like, maybe we should do something else and not have them at that school. And as I mentioned, you'd start, hey, this school looks kind of cool. And it was like, it's $33,000 a year per kid. I'm like, that's not Harvard. It's third grade, man.
That's a big reason why we moved out this way. Because I remember at the time, Zena and I were thinking we were going to homeschool our kids. But we're like, if we're going to live somewhere by a house, let's have a fallback plan of good school districts.
Yeah.
And which these are all out here are great. Sonia happened to get into the Earth School, which is an even better program, at least from what I hear and what I've seen so far. It seems awesome. But I compare this to my brother Ron, who ended up settling in the Pasadena area.
Okay.
And he ended up saying, he sent his two kids to the top flight schools, one went to Poly, one went to Sequoia, which are like really top flight private schools in LA. And he's like, for my two kids to go to schools, I have to make another $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
Because after tax.
Another $100,000.
Another $100,000 a year just to pay for their yearly tuition.
Isn't that crazy?
Because it's after tax dollars. So
yeah,
it's like $30,000 a kid to go to school.
I worry about this.
I've been paying college tuition since.
Yeah,
I'll pay college tuition for a combined 40 years for these two kids.
Yeah, and I think, and again, maybe it's different, and maybe people where Amelia grew up in Baltimore, and that especially the high end neighborhoods of Baltimore, it's competitive. It's and they do have some really